Hi, welcome everyone to this 10-minute tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be looking at Ielts writing task 1, and in particular, how to identify key features. Now, students find this, and generally task 1 in the Ielts writing test, very difficult because as medical professionals, you're not really used to looking at, well, in my experience with my students that I've taught, they've not had a lot of experience in looking at and analysing and reporting data in this way. So they find, students, medical professionals that I teach, they find this very, very difficult. But the good news is that it's not that difficult. As long as you just need to follow a simple method, a simple strategy. And as long as you follow that, it really isn't that difficult at all. So in this lesson, that's exactly what I'm going to teach you. I'll show you how to find the key features in a line graph. We'll be looking at a line graph. And obviously, this is what the examiner is looking for. How to, they're assessing your ability to identify the key features in the data that you're presented with. You're not supposed to report on everything that you see, and we'll look at a little bit about that in more detail. You just need to report the key features. So how do we go about identifying the key features? Okay, so this is the line graph that we're going to analyze and look at the key features for. So the first thing you need to do is you need to read the title. You need to look at the x-axis, the y-axis, and the key. So for those of you who are not very familiar with these terms, so obviously this is the title. This is the x-axis here, and this is the y-axis up here. X-axis runs along here, and the y-axis runs up here. Okay, so you need to look at the title. So basically what you need to do is look at what this graph, what the data is about. What is it telling you? What does it represent? So this is a comparison of car theft. So looking at car theft, and you can see that it's looking at the x-axis shows us the years, so from 1990 to 1999. And the y-axis is telling us the amount of thefts per 1,000 vehicles. And each line represents, you can look at the key here, and this represents, each line represents a different country. So we have Great Britain, Sweden, France, and Canada. So you need to familiarize yourself with it. I mean, it literally takes 10 seconds to kind of get to grips with what the data is telling you. What the x-axis is, what the y-axis is, and what the title is, and the key and things like that. It really doesn't take you that long. The next thing you need to focus on is the graph over a period of time, or is it a graph where you have to compare and contrast two different things, or compare and contrast over two dates? So not over a period of time, but perhaps between two dates. So perhaps 1990 and 1993, something like that. So you're not comparing it over time, it's just a comparison between two dates. Or perhaps sometimes it's just one date. So you're just comparing within that date. Why is this important? Well, it's important because it informs you on how you need to report the data, what language to use, what vocabulary to use, what grammar to use, how you talk about the data changes depending on whether it's a graph over time or in a certain period. So as you can see in this graph, it's a graph over time. So it's going from 1990 and comparing it all the way to 1999. So it's a graph over time. Okay, so obviously we cannot, we can't report everything. We can't report every single thing that we see. That's not what the examiner is looking for. Firstly, that's, you know, the examiner, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking at your ability to report on the key features, the most important things, the significant things you can see in this graph. And secondly, you don't have the time to report on every single thing. And you don't have, obviously you're working under a word limit, so you simply don't have enough words really to describe everything that is on this graph. So what do you need to do? How do you find the key features? You just need to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Just need to report on what you see. And you just need to identify 3 to 4 key features. So you look at the graph and just think, what are the 3 or 4 things, maximum 4 things, that are significant about the data in this graph? So feel free to pause the video here and just take a couple of minutes and just pick 3 or 4 things. I'm going to pick 4. So see if you can pick 4 significant things that you could extract from this data to write about in your essay. So go ahead and pause the video and have a think. So the most obvious, so you know, just stick to the most obvious things you can see. Don't make it complicated. It does not need to be complicated. So what's the most obvious thing? Let me just choose another color here. Okay, so what's the most obvious thing you can see here? The most obvious thing I would pick out is the fact that Great Britain, so this is Great Britain up here, that car theft in Great Britain throughout this period remained significantly higher throughout the period than any other country. It started off as the highest and it ended the highest, and it was significantly higher. I mean, you know, Sweden came close, but still Great Britain was the highest. So that would be my first key feature. So it was pretty simple, like, you know, it's quite obvious. I'm just sticking to what's obvious, you know, blatantly obvious. So that would be my first key feature. Great Britain was significantly higher, had significantly higher car thefts throughout the period. And then, you know, you would quote the data as well. Okay, second thing, the most obvious thing that I can see, let me pick another color. Oops. So the second thing I can see is Sweden. Yep, Sweden. It had the highest increase. So from there to there, you can see that's the highest increase there. So that's another key feature. Sweden had the largest increase, approximately from 6 to 15 per thousand. So that's the second key feature. Okay, let's carry on. The third key feature I would say is that in the first 5 years, so from 1990 to 1995, I would say Sweden, France, and Canada had very similar results. They were almost, I mean, they're slight, not exactly the same, but they were approximately, you know, it was quite similar. They had similar results in the first 5 years. So that's my third key feature. The fourth key feature, I would say, let me pick another color just to make it nice and clear. Okay, the fourth key feature, I would say, is France and Canada overall maintained similar results throughout the period. And they even ended at approximately the same figure in 1999. So that would be approximately 6. Remember, you don't have to, and don't say things like France and Canada in the car thefts in 1999 for France and Canada were 6 per 1,000. Don't say that. Always say approximately or about. Never give exact figures. You don't have to be exact. Just use, approximative vocabulary. So you could say that France and Canada maintained very similar results throughout the period, and in 1999 they were approximately, both countries were approximately the same. So those are my 4 key features. You can see that it's not actually that difficult. You're literally just reporting what you can see. And that's it. It does not need to be any more complicated than that. Okay. Just to review the key features then. So the first main feature is that Great Britain remained consistently higher throughout the period. Sweden, France, and Canada had very similar figures for the first 5 years. Sweden had the greatest rise in thefts in the period, from 6 to 15 per 1,000, and France and Canada maintained similar results throughout, with both at approximately 6 in 1999. So that's basically my key features. And you must have this clear in your mind when you first plan your essay in the first couple of minutes in the test. You can see how simple it was, how you're just looking at the graph and seeing what is the most obvious thing and just report on that. There is no way you have time to report on every single fluctuation that it went. Great Britain, it rose in 1990 to approximately 1992 to approximately 20, and then it fell, and then it went up again, and then you don't have time for that at all in the exam. And it's not what the examiner is looking for. They just want you to report the main key features of the graph. So keep that in your mind. The next problem students have is how to structure the essay, how to put all of that information, how to put those key features into a logical structure, into a logical essay. So I'm going to talk you through a basic structure for this particular essay. This is a very basic structure that you would use for most of the task 1 essays. I don't believe in giving templates. They do not work. And the examiner can spot this a mile off. You must, they're looking for your flexibility. They're looking for your ability to look at the data and write the essay accordingly. But the basic structure remains very similar for task 1. So that does make life a little bit easier. So the way I would put this essay together is paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 will always be a paraphrase of the question. So you would put the question in your own words using synonyms, and that will be your paragraph. That will be the introduction. The second paragraph is always the overview. Some people like to put the overview at the end, and that's absolutely fine. The way I teach it is the overview comes second. Remember, the overview is the most important part of this essay. If there's no overview in your essay in task 1, you will not get the score that you need. You won't get more than a band 5. It's the most important part of this essay. And it's easy because you just start off the excuse me, you just start off the paragraph just by using the word overall. And that's absolutely fine to do that. And you're just clearly stating to the examiner that this is my overview paragraph. You're making sure the examiner can see it, and you're telling him or her that you've done it. You've got the overall paragraph, the overview paragraph in your essay. So you would just start off the paragraph saying overall, and then you would just report the key features without any data. So the overview paragraph does not include any data whatsoever. You're just reporting the general picture of the data. Generally what's happened. You just report the key features very, very generally. You do not include any detail. You definitely don't include any data. The data comes in the other 2 paragraphs, which are known as the details paragraph, and that's basically what's happening in those paragraphs. You're reporting in more detail. So the overview paragraph is just reporting the data generally. So the paragraph, the 3rd paragraph, is where you take those key features and you go into a lot more detail. So in this essay, I would use paragraph 3, the 3rd details paragraph, if you like, to talk about Great Britain. So that key feature that we mentioned about Great Britain overall being the highest throughout the period, this is where I would talk about this in a lot more detail using the data and talking about that. And then in paragraph 4, I would put together Sweden, France, and Canada and talk about the other 2 key features. The other 3 key features in this one paragraph. So I would talk about how Sweden had the largest increase, and I would compare Sweden, France, and Canada having similar results in the first 5 years, and the fact, I would end, my last sentence would be about France and Canada maintaining similar results throughout, and in 1999 they both had approximately 6. Remember, there is no conclusion in task 1 essays. You are not giving any type of opinion in task 1. If you do give your opinion, then you'll be marked down for that. Leave your opinion to task 2. That's where all the opinions and things like that come in. So there is no conclusion as such in this essay. So be careful you don't do that. And that's it. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. This is how I would structure this essay. This is how I would put those key features together. And yeah, sometimes people put the overview paragraph at the end, and that's absolutely fine. The way I teach it, I prefer having it in the 2nd paragraph. So yeah, I hope you found that really useful. It is a problem students have. They fear task 1, a lot of my students, and I know a lot of people message me and they email me about task 1. They want some help. They find it quite difficult. So I hope you found this useful. Let me know what you think in the comments. And please like and share with your colleagues. Anyone who you think might also benefit from this video, just like and share it with them. And yeah, I hope you find it useful, and let me know what you think in the comments.